Time magazine called him the unsung hero behind the internet. CNN called him a father of the internet. President Bill Clinton called him one of the great minds of the information age. He has been voted history's greatest scientist of African descent. He is Philip Emeagwali. He's coming to Trinidad and Tobago to launch the 2008 Kwame Ture lecture series on Sunday, June 8th at the JFK Auditorium, New St. Augustine, 5 p.m. The Emancipation Support Committee invites you to come and hear this inspirational mind address the theme, crossing new frontiers to conquer today's challenges. This lecture is one you cannot afford to miss. Admission is free, so be there on Sunday, June 8th, 5 p.m. at the JFK Auditorium, New St. Augustine.
It's been said that out of the heart, the mouth speaks. I have spoken out of my heart. I have spoken a lot about supercomputers. I have spoken about the massively parallel processing supercomputer that I invented. I have spoken since the 1970s and spoken about how I was the first eyewitness to the experimental discovery of how and why a new ensemble of the slowest processors that computes together as one seamless, cohesive, massively parallel processing supercomputer is a new internet de facto. The words I spoke came from my discoveries, heart and brain. Those words will define me for posterity. To witness a discovery that has rich, fatal, and far-reaching consequences is like walking into a forest and witness a lot of leaves fall on your head. In a nutshell, this is my supercomputer story and my contribution to the development of the fastest supercomputer. I began programming supercomputers on June 20, 1974 in Corvallis, Oregon, United States. 2 years later, and in 1976, and at the National Computer Conference in New York City, a panel of supercomputer experts warned that parallel processing machines are, quote unquote, large and clumsy. That panel of supercomputer experts ridiculed, mocked, and rejected the then unproven technology of the massively parallel processing supercomputer. That panel of supercomputer experts offhandedly dismissed the technology of parallel processing as a huge waste of everybody's time. In the 1980s, I was dismissed from my research teams and dismissed for advocating the massively parallel processing supercomputer. In the 1980s, I could count the number of programmers that were massively parallel processing and count them on my fingers. But I needed only one finger to count them because I was the only person that was logged on 24/7 and logged on to the most massively parallel processing supercomputer ever manufactured. Today, the market value of that massively parallel processing supercomputer that I programmed alone has appreciated by a factor of 1,000. That new supercomputer that I programmed alone now costs the budget of a small nation. I experimentally programmed the new massively parallel processing supercomputer, and I programmed it alone. And I did so because the 25,000 vector processing supercomputer scientists of the 1980s were heeding the textbook warnings that it will forever remain experimentally impossible to harness the total theorized supercomputing power of an ensemble of thousands of processors. The supercomputing community's abandonment of the massively parallel processing supercomputer unintentionally created a certain cachet of exclusivity, and did so because they were de facto excluded from the frontier of human knowledge that was defined by the massively parallel processing supercomputer of the 1980s and earlier. The supercomputer textbooks of the 1970s and 80s cited Amdahl's law that was erroneously formulated in April 1967 and cited that incorrect law to argue that massively parallel processing across 64 binary thousand processors will forever remain impossible, or at least remain impractical.
Insightful and brilliant lecture.